How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Don't get all shy now.
No.
This is your moment where we're going to be singing your praises today because you've got a plethora of work from over the years that we can chat about.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's start with your journey. You are a Ghanaian-born artist, moved to the UK. Your
Ghana-born.
art explores a lot of your experiences back home, also Africa and the Western world. So let's talk a little bit about that. If anyone doesn't know who Koby is, give us a brief intro.
I'm Koby Martin. I was born in Ghana, and then I had my basic education, which is like my primary and my secondary school education in Ghana. And then I moved here by myself when I was 19. So my first introduction to the UK was Coventry University, where I studied art and design. And then it's crazy because when I moved I had never traveled, never been on a plane, no family, no friends, just moved here by myself. And when I got here, I thought Coventry was London because, again, I didn't have an idea of, I've never been away from my family, being the youngest in my family. So when I got settled in and after my second year, I was already making art in Ghana during my secondary school years, but during my second year, I picked it up again. I was making a lot more digital artwork, and I found out, London is like an hour away or two away because I used to catch the coach I used to catch the coach to London. So these times when I come to London, I'll network and, just try to get my work seen, trying to get my work heard. And through that, I was able to meet Crept and Konan and, there were conversations here and there. So my first breakthrough with my work was with Crept and Konan, where I designed the debut album cover, if anyone knows, The Long Way Home. And through that, it was, other people started gravitating to my work. So my thing was to just sort of get people to know what I can do, but I didn't know how to navigate through it, you know what I mean? Like with the whole art industry and even in the music industry. And even in the music industry, I didn't know at that time that you could use art to make something until Tinie Tempah's manager, Dumi Obaroto, took me under his wing, and I was the in-house designer for Tinie Tempah's record label for about 7 years. So through that, Dumi, which is Tinie's manager, was mentoring me up until, and still mentors me, but he further pushed me to, not stop making digital art, but like actually start painting, because he didn't know I could paint. So when I started painting, it opened a whole new window of opportunities for me within the art world, and I'll say we're here now.
That is a very fascinating story. I think the fact that some of your biggest work is with some of our biggest talent here in the UK, and while you were still figuring yourself out, I think that's a true testimony,
Thank you.
Can we get a little... Okay, so your work is described as an introspective autobiographical exploration. How did this focus on self-reflection become central to your art?
I think it's important to know who you are. And if you know who you are, then you know where you're going. So for me, I couldn't talk about anything else apart from my experience. And, my experience has to do with being away from my family for over 13, 14 years. And, trying to navigate things as a 19-year-old in a completely different country, in a space where he's never been. It took a lot of mental fortitude. It took a lot of discipline. It took a lot of growing up. It took a lot of losing people and not seeing them again. It took, you know what I mean? So I really had to adapt. Do you get what I'm saying? So all these things seep into my work, and it's just so natural and authentic and organic, such that when I'm making the work, I don't have to think about it. Do you know what I mean? So when you see the work, I'm making the work for me because it's my therapy. Do you know what I mean? They say the most beautiful art comes from pain. So there is a lot of pain in there, but it might have some colorful, elements in there. But yeah.
So were you an artistic child growing up? When did that spark happen for you?
My mom says when I was like 3 years old. So she's got some of my work back in Ghana. Yeah.
Do you have like the macaroni stuck on the paper, or was it more profound than that?
You know what's mad? They used to stick my work in the living room, so that was my first exhibition. I would say back in Ghana.
From there, I love that.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that until I have a lot of conversations with my mom. So she inspires my work a lot, and she's like my biggest supporter. And she always talks about how she would encourage me not to trace. That was her thing, and my first exhibition I would say was in my parents' living room.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so important when you have supportive parents that nurture you from such a young age. I've been having all kinds of conversations about this lately, and it really helps mold you into a confident person whatever you decide to pursue. So I really respect that. Do you recall any specific moments or influences aside from your parents that steered you towards having a career in art and being like, okay, I can actually make money from my art?
I think for me it's never been money driven, because as soon as you focus on money, God walks out of the room. Do you know what I mean? Because art is a spiritual thing. You know what I mean? It says, every good thing comes from the Father of lights, and that's from God. So you can't worship God and worship money. Do you know what I mean? So my thing is the focus of purpose, and I found God through my purpose. Do you know what I mean? So my gift is my ministry. I don't have to be in church to talk about God. I can talk about God through my work. And that's the most important thing. So for me, how I understand and how I approach my work is when God gives you the opportunity, He will provide. So I don't worry about money. Don't get me wrong, it's tough. There's been so many times that it's like there's nothing coming in, there's nothing, happening, but He always provides. You're never lacking. Do you know what I mean? God may not be on time when you need Him, but He's never late.
That's a word.
You know what I mean? It's Sunday.
Yeah, it's Sunday as well. Yeah, come through. I love the resounding in the crowd. We all know. Okay, let's talk about some identity and storytelling, because your art often incorporates the Adinkra symbols and your Ghanaian culture.
100%.
So can you explain how significant your culture is in your work and why it contributes to the narratives that you create?
I think for me is important. It's about the codes, and just as if I'm from a Ghanaian home and my parents are always like, they speak English to me, but then again they also tried their very possible best to speak Chi, which I can speak fluently. So for me, it's about the continuation of conversations in a different land, in a different space. Again, remember what I said was, if you don't know where you're from, you don't know where you're going. So it's important that I include these elements of my culture and my heritage in my work, such that when people see it, they know that he knows what he's talking about. He knows where he's from. Irrespective of the place you put me, I can still adapt and still hold on to my origin. So for me, it's very, very important. There are about 200 to 300 Adinkra symbols, and every one of them has a separate meaning. But I tend to use one of them, which is called the Sankofa symbol, and it's a symbol of a duck or a swan. And it actually means that in order to know where you're going, you need to always look back. You feel me? So I'm making these new set of paintings. I just got a new studio in Warren Street, and as I'm making these works, I watch a lot of cartoons, by the way. And I was watching Donald Duck, and it just hit me like I could actually express the Adinkra symbol as an adaptation or a variation of Donald Duck or of Daffy Duck, depending on the context of what's happening in the painting. And again, speaking of contemporary art, that's an adaptation of including popular culture into my work, juxtaposed against, the conversation of my Ghanaian heritage, and then whatever it is that's happening in the painting with the historical context. But I'm sorry, I'm going off topic, but yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We have time. I'd love to know what some of your favorite cartoons are.
Ratatouille.
Oh, how many times have you seen the
Oh
film?
man, literally, man, like I should be a character in there. Man.
They should give you some royalties or something
For sure.
for that. Okay, so how do you navigate blending your African heritage with like the life that you've experienced in Europe through your artwork?
Just being authentic. You can never duplicate authenticity, man. And if you're not being yourself, how long can you keep that up for? You're eventually going to break.
That's true.
Unless they say cut. You know what I mean? So it's important to be authentic. It's important to be, there's only one you. And, you're made in the image of God. And no one can duplicate that. So for me, self-belief and self-worth is very, very important. And it seeps into, who I am. So I think it's not something I think about. It's just, I never thought I was going to come here to the UK. It wasn't something that was planned. Like, I didn't have a passport when I was living in Ghana. I had my passport when I was coming here at 19 years old. So, all these experiences seep into like who I am and, defines me as a person. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay. Are there any particular themes or stories that you like to touch on in your art or that you like to convey?
Yeah, I think for me, it always starts with my family. For me, legacy is important. It starts with my family, but it doesn't end there. The conversation always breaks out and then reflects what's happening around me and what's happening prior to when I was here. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like historical context, or in terms of like things that are happening on the news, or that I'm experiencing in my personal life. Do you know what I mean? So, as Nina Simone said, as an artist, you're meant to reflect the times, not only what's happening around you, but in your personal life or in conversations. Some days you go to the studio and you don't paint, you don't make work, but you just have friends around and you have conversations. And then 2 weeks later, something that they said triggers what you're making and it inspires it. So, there's no fixed blueprint to it.
So memory and your personal history is something that plays a pivotal role in the things that you create.
Yeah.
So how do you select, basically going back to off the back of what you just said, like you might have a conversation and it'll trigger something in you, but how do you select? Do you have a process of like, okay, I will do this? Or is it like you receive the download and you're like, this is what I have to create? Or do you go through a spreadsheet or something? Okay, this is what I feel like I should be doing.
I think for me, it's more of emotion.
Okay.